Hey, welcome everybody. So today's subject, of course, blended families, co-parenting, step families, step kids. I mean, there's lots to this subject, which I could go all day long on all those things. So I'm going to try to do the basic um, of the co-parenting first, and we'll go into some statistics. We'll go into a little bit of how we can help the blended family, because I mean, blended families, there's lots of definitions of that. Grandparenting, there's even um, all the people that we think of that are parenting our children, our teachers, the daycare, nanny, an aunt. I mean, there's just a blended family is pretty high percentage nowadays, because it takes a lot of people to help, of course, with that. So how do we repair and renew and rebuild? So to start off with is co-parenting. The real co-parenting definition is two parents co-parenting a child after a split, after a divorce, after you've brought a child in, and then we're now co-parenting separately. So that's what we'll focus on mostly. And then at the end of this, there's, of course, several books and resources. So we can go into that more. We have to remember that the main thing that we're going to focus on is what kids need and what they're, you know, it's like, okay, so co-parenting is parenting, with two people. Kids are not divorcing anybody. We'll get into divorce poison a little bit, but they're really not divorcing anybody, you know, separating themselves from anybody. There is alienation that happens, but um, the thing is how do we rebuild a family with co-parenting? There's one statement that is false, that is a myth, that is I kind of despise. I have about three main ones, and this is one of them: that it takes two people to tango. I had a professor that talked about that and did research on that and teaches classes on that. It does not take two people to tango, because it takes two people to have a relationship. So what we want to do is say, okay, so we have two people that have to have a relationship. A coworker, your family members, your partner, it doesn't matter. It takes two people to have a relationship. So how do we have two people that can go into parenting, or try to build or renew or manage and maintain a lifestyle? So it takes two people. Now that's why this is really difficult, because we only have control over our behavior. So this is for you. If you have an issue with this, with your other co-parenter or other, share this with them. Try to get on the same page, because it takes two. So that's that. So crucial 101. This is like, these crucial 101s are just the main issues, that this is how we first start with anything. So say the scenario is a split after a 20-year marriage. The divorce rate is the highest between like 5 and 7 years of marriage, and then it jumps to the 20 to 25-year marriage section. So so it's neck and neck. I mean, so that's the two highest times when people get divorced. So repair. So how do we help the fear of the unknown? So the fear of the unknown is the definition of stress, of four words that I've put together as for years, and I'm teaching like stress, fight, flight, or freeze, and trauma and resilience. And so the fear of the unknown. So there's lots of unknowns that happen after a split and you have to co-parent. So trauma, How do we repair resentment, and how do we repair hurt? Those are deep rooted issues. Those are the root. So when we go into the root, so think of a tree, and here's the issue in the leaves, and you can draw this out. I have people draw this out all the time. So here's the root down here, and here's the issue in the leaves. So here's the issue. We have something new, we have a financial issue, we have, a broken car, broke down car. And then here's the trunk. The trunk's all your secondary emotions that spin off of the leaves of the issue. Then the root issue is the trunk. The trunk, I mean the roots. So after we get through the trunk and we have all these hurt and resent, I feel disappointed, I feel disrespected, I feel fearful. Those are all secondary emotions that feed the root. And these leaves fall off and feed the root. So how do we treat the root? The trauma, the loss, and the grief, and the powerless. That's those are the four main things that are in the root that we have to treat. That's treatment. That's therapy. That's, takes some work. So powerless into power. How do we repair powerless? So like I said, powerless is in that root issue. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by choices, consistency, and we get out of the crisis. So when we're in all four crisis mode of loss, grief, trauma, and powerless, then that means we're in a crisis. So kids will be in a crisis for a while. It might take 3 to 6 months for an adjustment after, just the same way as if a kid moved for schools or moved homes. So that takes months. So just know that. And if you're in the crisis for more than 6 months and those symptoms keep coming, then we need some help. So how do we renew? Okay, so how do we renew something? How do we grow something new? So uncoupling, it's a term that is in my first book that we're going to talk about, is this. So this is just the co-parenting's handbook. I don't really mind this one. It's pretty well written. It has a lot of information in it, all the way to the back of way further than I can do in this webinar. But so this is a really good resource. So uncouple. So how do we uncouple first? How do we renew this so we can uncouple and untangle? So we have to be in parent mind. So if we're co-parenting, we have to be in the parent mind. If we're in the resentful mind, if we are in the get back at my ex mind, if we are in our own powerless situation, we're not going to uncouple, we're not going to untangle, and we're not going to be in a parent mind. So that's super, super important. And that starts on page 15 in the very first that co-parenting handbook. It talks about that. So yeah, values, boundaries, rituals. So how do we renew something? Well, we have new boundaries, new values, and new rituals. So a boundary, there is boundaries that have to be put up when you need them. And so what happens is we have to first find a value. So we say, okay, we value this. So if we value this, we put a boundary around it. So as I will talk about in the end of this, family dinner. So we start new rituals again, we start new boundaries, we start new value systems. So that's really important. And that's a sit down with your family, single or not, or co-parenting or not, or grandparenting or not. You sit down with everybody involved and say, what do you value? What do I value? What do you value? And then pick your top 3 values. So if it's health, then we start getting healthy. And family dinners, number 1 for that. So statistics from all the way back when I got my certified family life educator degree in my undergrad, is we constantly, there's just tons of research on family dinner. So that's just an example of like a new value system that we put up. And then we put boundaries around that. We say, nope, dinner 3 times a week. This is how it looks. You're in charge of Tuesday, you're in charge of Wednesday, you're in charge of Thursday, and everybody helps. And if your value in that is to connect, then you don't have phones at the table, right? That's a tough one. But lots of statistics are showing that we're eating in the bedroom and in the living room more than ever before. So rebuild. So now we've got this repair and this renew. And now how do we rebuild? Well, you have to rebuild safety, number one. So I always draw this out for families and couples. Safety. First, we have to have safety. We have to feel safe and understood. So we can't feel safe if we don't feel understood. If we don't have any power, if we feel powerless, we will not feel safe. So in a situation, you think of the last time you had no power over the situation, how unsafe you felt. So how you build that is then you go into trust, and that's connection, that's rituals, that's consistency, that's how you build trust. And you need to rebuild family fun and balance. So that's according to your value systems again. So here's the needs of the kids. Reevaluate what the needs are of the kids and change your lifestyle accordingly. And sometimes you don't know the needs of the kids because they don't communicate that. That's when a therapist can come in and, okay, let's go through these. What do you need? And the thing is kids will complain about what they're lacking. My very first class of love languages, that's how you can figure out a young child's love language is what they complain about. Hey, mom, I miss you. You're gone a lot, or, and then mommy guilt sets in, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, so what does that mean? I'm gone a lot. Okay, so the kid needs, quality time, and that might be their love language and they're not getting enough. So, and then you're like, okay, what can I do to help that? So, yeah, let's go on to management. So this is where we have to learn how to manage. So I am nothing will be fixed. Nothing is changed as much as just the management. So, and I'll talk about this a little bit, but maybe I'll bring it up now. I'll talk a little bit later. But what happens when you do a business deal with somebody? It takes two people, right? Two people to do a win-win, or two people to do a lose-lose, or to do a lose-win, or, but it takes two people. So this is where we manage a business, and this is crucial. So how do you emotionally coach? How do you manage grief, loss? That's the emotional side, but here's the logical side. How do we manage conflict and communication? That's a business deal. That goes into making sure that as we co-parent, if you need to, make it a business deal. And I'll talk about that later. So how do we manage, grief and loss? That's a root issue. Grief, loss, and trauma. Those are root issues. How do we manage that? Coping skills, therapy, day-to-day rituals, routines. So routines are crucial, right, for the child's brain. Our brain really likes routine, and we like autopilot. If we didn't have autopilot, we would have to learn how to start our car every day and drive it. It would be exhausting, right? We know how to brush our teeth. We don't have to think about it. We just autopilot. So that's incredibly important. What happens is we end up not being present in other moments because we're in autopilot. So, but routines for children are crucial, okay, to manage. Boundaries, crucial. So assertiveness is opposite of aggressive, passive aggressive, and passive. Those are three anger management terms, if you will. They're kinds of anger. So you can either be aggressive, passive aggressive, or passive. And so the opposite is assertive. And so we've talked about boundaries. How to put them up is a whole different situation, right? So here's boundaries. Now, how, we know we need to put up a boundary, but how do we do it? Number one, assertively. And then how do we assertively continue to, allow that person to violate our boundary or to follow our boundary? So, and that's a whole class on boundaries, which I will actually be doing in January because boundaries are super important. So January's class is on boundaries. So we'll move on, but that one is essential. So all of that hour next month, it will just be teaching about boundaries and then how to be assertive with those boundaries. So maintaining, so now we're going to manage those things, and then how do we maintain? So how do we maintain the healing and the trust that we talked about? How do we co-parent and stay in the co-parental role, keep the child in the child role? Okay, so last month I talked about child versus parent role. I'm okay, you're okay, a little bit. So, and if you need those links, and we have those, you could watch it again or revisit that. So, how do we keep the child in a child role and you stay in a parental role? This is what this is talking about. So, number one, we just don't involve our children in adult stuff. We don't make the child the middleman. We don't ask the child when they want to go to their other parent's house for parent time. No, we're in charge of that. The parents are in charge of that. We don't middleman. We don't triangulate. So all those things. That's really tough because you're the only one that can control that. But if you have a co-parenting relationship that you can build like this, then you can both say, you know what, we've agreed in an email that we're going to put the kids' needs up here and keep them in the child role. And we're going to stay in the parental role because this is the biggest shift that happens with co-parenting and split families and blended families. And I'm not saying that, a sibling can't help take care of a sibling and help out around the house and be kind, but we want to keep them in the child role, meaning they don't pay the bills, they don't take care of, they don't turn into parentification is what it's called. So now if that's happening, that turns into some serious toxicity, some anxiety. The child is put in the parental role when they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be a child, right? So future goals. How do we do that and say, okay, for the next 6 months, this is our goal, backed up by our value system? So pick one. And it suggests that in one of the books, I think it's the co-parenting one, of, pick one and just pick one. I'm always about a 10-minute activity every day, just one thing and pursue it. So if it's one thing that we're working on, it's very simple, it's very timed, it's very, just simple. So we pursue it, and we have to do that new 10-minute to 20-minute activity every day, and we focus on that. So, and that should be, I call them projects instead of goals, but future goals. So here's our project for the month, here's our project for the week, and we do something for 10 minutes minimum every day to pursue that new project or that new goal. So if it's to get organized, if it's to eat dinner at the table again, then you do 10 minutes of prep every single day with that. If that's writing down grocery lists, if that's asking, making sure the dishes are ready, all that stuff, cleaning off the table, it's 10 minutes every day according to your value system that you've put up. Okay, mindfulness. So this goes into this little co-parenting book. So co-parenting, you see that, in a mindful, conscious way. That's what this one's about. It talks about mindfulness. Okay, so I don't know about you, but do we have a problem? Do we have a problem with being present? Do we promote safe, secure, and seen and soothe? So do we promote those? To be present, you have to be able to feel safe and to provide safety. You have to be present. You have to be here in the frontal lobes, not in fight, flight, or freeze, because that's not our safety. That's our defense mechanism, stress brain. So that's the opposite. So to feel safe, we have to be here. If we don't feel safe, we react, we run from the bear, we fight, we flee, or we freeze. So we have to be safe to provide security is consistency with that. And then the child needs to be seen. Like, okay, seen. I can see a child, but if I'm not present, I can be in the same room and we can be extremely unpresent. And this is happening more and more in our society, statistics show. And then how do we soothe? So we have to teach our child how to soothe, self-soothe. But how do we soothe? We cannot soothe if we're not present. So this is co-parenting the mindful way. How do we evaluate that? Well, you go to page 31 and you can see if you are present, if you are being a present parent and providing safety, security, helping to soothe the child. This is all an attachment issue also between 0 and 3 that's super, super important. So if we have a split family and single parents or blended family, and 0 to 3 is not happening with safety, security, and being seen and felt like they're not invisible, that's the opposite, and soothing, they will have an attachment issue, and you want to definitely prevent that. So okay, so here's the tips for the management part. So back to where I said, how do we do this as a business? So think about it. It takes 2 people to make a deal, right? 2 people. And 2 people to follow through with that deal, and 2 people to have brainstorming, to brainstorm on ideas. If you borrowed money to a business partner and you didn't have a contract, that's not smart. So how are you going to be a CFO? How are you going to be a CEO with this deal, with a co-parent, with a co-grandparent? You got to figure it out. And I always suggest that email is always the best way. I will go through some of these hot topic meetings. So how do we, if you are making payments to someone in a business deal, how do you know, right, if the other person has made the payment or it needs to pay it late? You report, right? So if someone says, oh my gosh, your payment's late, and they have to ask the other person, that's not so cool. So if we report that we've made the payment or it's going to be late, then the other person doesn't have to ask. That keeps you in an equal partnership. So if you report to the other parent something has been done, and there's lots of scenarios with this, right? This was done. We ended up going to the dentist. We ended up having a cavity. We got it taken care of. Missed you because you can both be there, but this is what happened. You report that immediately in an email. You report it. You report when a kid's sick. You report when something's going down. You report when you have questions. So you report. These are my questions. These are my concerns. That is reporting also with questions. So you don't have to just state. You can ask a question. So when are you going to do this? But it's really just reporting is what we want, so the other person doesn't have to ask. So questions, yeah, sometimes you have to have them, but most of the time we just want statements in that email. Hot topics. So I call them hot topic meetings. So I teach families to do this all the time. So this is what a hot topic meeting is. Very limited scheduled time, under 30 minutes. So you can have a hot topic, and I don't have this on here, but hot topic meeting is this. You have a hot topic notebook for the week. You have a hot topic gratitude notebook for the week. So here's what we're doing right, and here's what we need to talk about. Hot topics. This is scheduled when everybody's happy, fed, when we have a problem. Now, in that hot topic notebook, anybody can write in it. And it's like, okay, on Saturday or Sunday at 3, we know we're going to talk about these things, and we're going to kind of go over those. Now, that's as a family, as a blended family. So as a co-parent, you can also have these. FaceTime, in an email, or face-to-face. If you are cordial, do it face-to-face and kind of go over those things. And maybe it's a once a week thing, maybe it's a once a month thing. So it depends. So it's definitely blended family or just any kind of family. I mean, hot topic meeting once a week is suggested that I have people do. And then if there's nothing in the notebook to really talk about, okay, then we just talk about what we're doing right. So someone can write down, I'm having a beef with this. Now, if they write 5 stars next to that hot topic, that goes first. That's a serious thing that they feel is very point to get, to get to the top of the list. So the other stuff's like, okay, well, we can talk about that next week. It's not that big of a deal. But these are some of the things that you can talk about with a co-parent, of course, in a hot topic. You've got to go back to, like we talked about, here's your value system. You have to know what that is. If you value a child that sleeps, you're going to have a bedtime routine. You're going to have discipline. You're going to have rules. You're going to have a school issues, what you do with school. And so, of course, you're never going to agree on all these things, but can you go from here? If we've got a co-parent here and here, and you're just trying to slide in just a little bit, because here's your value system. You could care less if a kid goes to bed at, late at night on the weekends. Well, this is the other culprit. It's like, you know what, let's try to stay on the same page and get our kid to bed at a decent hour on the weekends too, because every weekend when they come back, it seems like they're extremely exhausted and they're missing every single Monday, first, second, third, fourth periods, if they're a teenager and they're staying up way too late. So then we've got a problem right on Monday. So here's the value system. Okay, how can we be on the same page so this kid doesn't come back exhausted on Monday morning? So lots of scenarios, right? So doctors, phone visits, limits. Just what are your limits to, friend time, social media time, gaming, all the limits that we need to have. So you list all those things in an email. Here's the hot topics I want to talk about. Here's the hot topics I need to talk about. And then try to knock those out weekly. Okay, so how we can communicate a little better through that is, of course, how do we build that balance, connection, and stability and power by doing this? Because you're keeping the child in the child role in this, right? So here's 2 parents, here's 2 grandparents, here's, aunt and parent. Okay, so how do we do that? That gives you power, that gives you stability, it gives the kid power, it gives them stability, and it's connection, and everybody's balanced. So other ways to communicate and manage co-parenting in that way and communicating is Google Calendar, of course. So there's a couple apps I found, of course, that are listed in a couple different places. One's Two Houses, it's called, and that's like a $10 a month thing. Our Family Wizard is a court friendly app that you can use. So just look them up if you want to find some apps to help you coordinate things, because we have to coordinate. So parents are in charge of the residential schedule. Like I said, the child is not in charge. Now, good luck with that when we get 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so 14, the law says, okay, a judge will listen to a child's requests of needs. And that's where you two come together and say, okay, here's the co-parenting. We are now a blended family. We are now separate. We are now divorced. We are now this, and this is what we need to do. Those things can improve, change, manage those scheduling, residential schedule, right? And those change. They will. So it's essential when the kids are little to make sure all that's in the divorce decree. That's a whole other part that I help you with a lot. So, so if we're in charge of their schedule, what does that look like for stability, power, balance, routine, consistency, right? Kids, number 1, have to have consistency. The least amount of disruption is the best for the brain. You are going to have severe behavior with a child that has inconsistency. It's not your fault. Guilt sets in, and I'm going to talk about that later. But yes, it's like, this is how, but it is part of managing it, though. It is what it is, right? When we have a kid that goes from home to home, that's instability, inconsistent. Okay, but the schedule has to be consistent as much as possible. The more exchanges during the week, the more inconsistent it is. So I am personally, and as a certified mediator and as a family law I've done in my undergrad, is the consistency is essential. So we are in charge of that schedule. And if the child needs to chime in at 14, 15, and 16, yeah, they're going to. And then after that, good luck, right? Sorry, but you can't drag a child to the other parent. You can't drag the child if they decide that they want to stay home this one weekend because something's going on with their friends. Yeah, okay, well, let's switch weekends or let's figure it out. And that's you two. That's you two saying, let me talk to your mom. Let me talk to your dad. Let me talk to, you know, grandparents. Let me see if, because I've got to work. And so that's going to mess me. So I'm going to have to, so we will figure that out and I'll get back to you. So that's how we try to manage that. So, and educate and seek for professional help. So talking about separation, divorce, by the way, in managing co-parenting, then we get into talking about changes, talking about separation, talking about divorce, talking about the schedule, just you two. This is co-parenting. This is not about this is not talking with the child. If you want to look at that, that is, of course, in this one, chapter 2. So it's like, okay, how do we talk about it? And then how do we go to talk about it with our kids after the fact? So there's lots of resources in these. So damage control. This is just a little list. How do we have damage control with this? You got to check your spiteful motives. Okay. So who's having some spiteful motives? This is some natural stuff that happens, right? When a relationship ends, when someone has passed away, when loss, grief, and trauma is happening. That's just all it is. It's the same emotion. It's just a different event for everybody. So here's when the emotion's happening. And then you add powerless to it. Remember, that's crisis. So here's loss, grief, and trauma. Okay, it's very traumatic. Loss, grief is happening. And then we have powerless. So the best thing is to help damage control of those 4 emotions that are happening is being spiteful. And so if you're gonna be spiteful, this is not going to help your damage control. So lack of boundaries, insecurity, revenge, guilt, shame driven behavior. So guilt. I've just done something bad. I have guilt. We get into lots and lots of guilt in divorces and separations and blended families after the fact. So yeah, but then there's shame. Shame, of course, whole other subject. I will talk about those several classes next year. Shame-driven, parenting, shame-resilient parenting. So I'm a shame resilient therapist. So here's shame. I am a flawed person. I am bad. Like, I'm bad. Here's guilt. Oh, I just did something bad. Okay. So what happens with shame is we bully, we persecute, we have lots of insecurity, we have lots of resentment. I'm a flawed person now. So we got to get out of that. And shame kills connection, creativity, compassion, and courage. They say all 4 of them. There's 4 C's. And I add create because Brene Brown says, yep, shame kills all those things. We don't have courage, we don't have connection, we don't have compassion, we don't have creativity when we are in shame. So yeah, shame-based, parenting, of course, will kill all those things. Anger, hostility, rage, that's just your anger management stuff. Your fight, flight, or freeze. If you feel like you're going to, 1 to an 8 in, 10 seconds, and you just get hostile and rage and anger, we need to do some anger management. Denial. So we're not going to do any damage control if we're in denial, right? And there's lots of information about that in some of these books. Splitting. Okay, so splitting. This is a book about protecting yourself when divorcing someone that has a personality disorder. And this goes into legal and psychological advice. So that is that. So if we're in denial, in a personality trait, I'm just going to say a personality trait that has a lot of denial in it, you're not going to be able to do much damage control. It's going to be difficult. So disconnect, like I said, like shame will kill connection. So if we're disconnected and we're not present, we're not going to have damage control. Being passive aggressive, or just being spiteful, it's called contempt in the Four Horsemen of Gottman. If we're being real spiteful, real passive aggressive, okay, so we say yes and we really mean no, and then we don't follow through. That's passive aggressive. But then we go into manipulative, and then underneath that is vindictive, and that is difficult because that's when we have no human regard. So that's when we get into some personality traits that are difficult. So corrupting reality, kind of the opposite, the same thing as denial. So how do we corrupt reality? I mean, well, this is the facts. So thinking errors. So how we corrupt reality is by having lots of thinking errors. We overgeneralize, we jump to conclusions, we are a black and white thinker. So here's reality. So reality equals facts. So facts are not reality. So our reality. So here's the facts. So if we're denying that, if we're coercing that, if we're corrupting that, then usually there's some thinking errors in there. Okay. So yeah, step parents, partners, and I'm just going to touch on this just a little bit because it's part of this. So, then we get into co-parenting. Okay, that's one thing, right? Co-parenting. And then we have step parenting, we have step partners, we have step children. So how do we parent all of that? That is really, really a broad place because everybody has a different situation, right? So co-parenting is key with the step parent, okay? So co-parenting is a key for step parents. So if you're trying to co-parent with okay, we got two parents, right? And then we got two step parents maybe. So both are blended and they're both married or in partnerships, and they're recommitted to other people. So step parents, if you're a step parent, please have the same guidelines for all the co-parenting. So you have to have boundaries. You have to know where your place is. You have to stay in the parental role. Don't switch it. And then how to keep the step kids and the blended families all balanced, because we're going to parent them different because we've got so many players, right? So many players here. So in early stages of any relationship, this one came from, this goes into, I want to say it's definitely, two parent homes. But the back, like 3 chapters of this is how to keep a low profile in the early stages of a new relationship, and how do we introduce a new parent, a new partner into a co-parent situation or a blended family, or that's a lot of subject right there. But basically at the beginning, it's a low profile. I've asked a couple of friends that are remarried about this, and I says, I'm teaching this class. I says, I've watched you for the last 2 years co-parent and co-step parent and blend, and I mean families of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that blend together, right? So what she said, one of my friends said, I can't parent my new husband's kids. I do not parent them. I stay in the parental role, but I do not parent them. So parental role, adult role, is different than parenting. So she said that to me. She says, I support him, but I do not parent his children. Because that takes years of trust. It's not a replacement. It's not I am not their mother. You know, they have a mother. I can coach and challenge, and that's the triangle that we talked about a couple classes ago. If you want to coach and challenge, that's how you keep in the role. You don't persecute or rescue, you coach and challenge the child. Just think of those two words. And I had a therapist teach me the two words of entice and invite. You can entice and invite a kid. You can coach and challenge anybody, and that's a business deal. That's the best way to do it. Bullying someone or rescuing them does not work. It's a triangle. You got to get out of the triangle. So in order to do that, you have to coach and challenge. So just think of those words. How can I coach and challenge? That's a value system. How can I entice and invite the kid that stays in their room at 15 to get off their phone and come down to dinner? You can only entice and invite. And you can have consequences and you can have rewards. That's about it. So back to, last month's class, it's just how to follow instructions, the basic needs of parenting. So time to adjust. It takes time. So after 2 or 3 years, it's like, I'm not parenting his children. We are a blended family and we have our own family unit with our own family rules and our own family hot topics. Then we have this, and then we try to blend as much as possible with the family, and it's a business deal. So you coach and challenge people to report, to, do chores, whatever that is around your house. So seek blended family therapy, essential, before, after, during, it's essential. So, and chapter 9 of the co-parenting book talks about that. So let's see, chapter 9. So yeah, so just, new adults in your child's life. So that's chapter 9. So how do we introduce those? How do we adjust to time? How do we keep a low profile in the beginning? For how long? It really depends. But so then we got this lovely, now I'm being a Debbie Downer, lovely statistic. This is factual. So we have about 69% of remarriages do not stay married. They end in divorce. The third marriage is divorce. So this is 75% of remarriages or recoupling with children do not last. There is conflict, expectations broken. There's expectations that weren't put up in the beginning, so then we didn't have expectations. The family clashes in hopes of, trying to blend the family. It's very difficult. Now, what that tells me as a clinician and a very passionate person about families and remarriages and keeping two parents in the home, because we know that two parents in the home is the best, is preventative work, right? And walking through those conflicts and those expectations, it is really difficult to send kids through this twice, 3 times, right? Are they resilient? Sure. Will they have long-term issues? Absolutely. Everybody does. So that's where treatment and loss, grief, and trauma, we don't want that to be untreated for a long period of time. It's difficult. It is super difficult to blend a family. I call it a miracle, but miracles can happen. So it can happen. A little bit of work, but it can happen. And then we have to know why we want to blend a family. What is your value system that says, you know what, this is better for our kids? Every statistic shows that remarriage, recoupling, two parents in the home is better. So, and this is smaller print, so I'm going to put on my glasses. So 75% of marriages recoupling will not last, okay? So 60 years ago, the average dinner time, this is just on the example of that dinner stuff, was 90 minutes. We took 90 minutes to cook, sit down, prepare. We probably had to milk the cow. I don't know, so we could put a meal together. Less than 12 minutes today. I mean, that's like, I'm probably in the drive up for 12 minutes, and then I eat my food in about 3 if we're doing a drive up run, right? Okay, so kids and teens who share a family meal 3 or more times a week are less likely to be overweight, eat healthier, of course, perform academically. So academically, that's a vague thing. Perform academically and better grades. Believe me, it's way deeper than that. It's concentration, it's social, it's shame resilience. They overall do better in school, overall, and academically, but overall. So are less likely to engage in risky behaviors, of course, and have better relationships with their parents. Teens having frequent family dinners report that having better relationships with their family, one-on-one times more likely, 1.5 times, more likely to have an excellent relationship with their mother, twice as likely to have an excellent relationship with their father, twice as likely to have an excellent relationship with their siblings. So that sounds good, right? Teens struggle with those things, and we struggle with teens. Teens survived. Surveyed. Sorry, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Teens surveyed state that they are likely to like family meals. They do. 71% say, I like this. I need this. 71%. Even though they give you the beef at the beginning, and they're like, oh, I'm not hungry. So you're like, oh, okay, yeah, just stay in your room, or here, let me take your food to your room. I've taken a dinner to my kid, yeah, I have. And so it's like you do what you can, but catching up, spending time together. We have lost that time that we used to have. Okay, yeah, 60 years ago, but I'm talking statistically 40 years ago, 20 years ago. We are definitely having less time with our family. So if that's something that you want to beef up, then you co-parent and you come together and say, you know what, I have that value. Oh, wait, I have that value. How are you doing it at your house? How am I doing it at my house? How are we helping our kid be stable and consistent in that? Well, we're going to add, family dinners, and we're going to make sure we're having family dinners, so that's just an idea, so let's, there's the resources. So let's have some time for some questions and see how we've done. And those are the books, and there's some websites and links to the other handouts. So
we don't have any questions that have been typed in, so let's do it. If anyone has any, you can go ahead and send them to me, or just unmute yourself and ask them. Yeah, give it just a second and see if anyone has any.
I didn't talk about this. It's on here.
Do I talk about it? No one's asking questions right now, so maybe they'll
interrupt me if you have a question. So this is the last book. This is like, if we had time to get to this. This is deep. This is thick. It's one of the deepest books I own. It is a very, very, very good book. I only found this about 6 months ago, and it's reprinted. It's redone. So Divorce Poison. This is how to protect your family from bad mouthing and brainwashing. This is the passive aggressive, vindictive, manipulative stuff I was talking about. This talks about when it is appropriate to step in, when it is appropriate to be assertive, even criticize, and I don't like that word, but he talks about this. So this is essential. It's on Audible. Like I said, go slow if you've been in a divorce, or you're sending this to someone that has or is, or if you're watching this and you're like, okay, this is lots of different scenarios, right? Really well written. It has a take action note almost on every other page. So it's like, take action. Here's how you do it. This is what you need to do to take action. I love it, but it's very deep. It has lots of information in it and understanding. So how to technically, scientifically stay away from divorce poison. And if this is happening in your post-divorce stuff, then it's a guide to help you get through that.
So we have a couple questions.
Okay.
One for me. So someone asked, we have access to this webinar after and slides? So yeah, you will. So that's why I was trying to get everyone's names, is so that I can send you the slides, any handouts she talked about, like book references, and recording of this. So you will receive this recording in your email if you joined in today. So if you're here right now, you're going to get this email. And if you don't get it for some reason, just send me an email, respond to the ones I've been sending out, and let me know you haven't received it. I'll probably get it out tomorrow afternoon at the latest. So if you don't have it tomorrow afternoon, let me know. And then the next couple questions are for you, Carol. So can you give a recommendation for a blended family therapist?
Well, Blomquist is really good at this. It's a great resource because family therapy is not covered under your insurance. So we have this benefit here for companies and families. Whoever lives in your household, they don't have to have the insurance. It's whoever lives in your household, you have this benefit. You come in and start blended family therapy for free, because that's the thing is, and even if you meet once a month and and kind of renew and follow up with the steps so you go through this PowerPoint, you go through the steps. Okay, so we start with hot topic jar or notebook, I call it, right? And you do that as a family. You start with your family values. You start with communicating with your co-parent. And I've had co-parents come in with the kid all the time. That is amazing. When two parents that have been separated, divorced, come in because one child in the middle is having school issues, right? So if I get those two parents in and they are remarried and they're separated and they're, on to their own lives, a new, coupling or whatever, that's phenomenal, right? Because here again, it's about the child. This is co-parenting a child. So yeah, so you can come in anytime. And now if you want to do cash pay, then find a therapist that you can see, every couple weeks or weekly and do some work, And so people with private practice, do that all the time. And I, that's what we do on the side. So it's like, okay, weekly, that's your opposite of once a month, right? It's like really doing some work because there's some major trauma going on. You need to come in more often. So, but long-term therapy, is that way. So cash pay or go through our services here for sure.
Yeah, and if you call in and just say, when you call our offices, our support staff will answer, and you can just let them know kind of what's going on, and they'll be able to look at our therapist bios and their interests and what they're good at, and then pair you with a therapist that's good. So when you call and you let them know, they're not just going to put you with anyone. They'll make sure that you're with somebody that has that experience. Ideally, that's what they'll do.
Yeah, family therapy. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, a couple more questions. So this one's a little long, but how can you be in the parental role with stepchildren when their biological parent is at work or not home during the day? I like the idea that your friend says she doesn't actually discipline or parent her stepchildren, but I struggle with actually doing that with my children that are under 7.
Okay, so you've got an under 7 child, yeah. And that example, by the way, that I gave, they're all over 17 years old, all of their kids. So yeah, so no, do you have to parent a 7-year-old when you're the parental figure at home? Absolutely, right? So you have to parent them. You have to help them clean up. You have to help them with dinner. You have to help them get ready for bed. That's the part of here's co-parenting, right? But here's step co-parenting. So I call it step co-parenting. So here's co-parenting, the two parents, number one, and then here's the next steps underneath that, grandparents, step co-parenting. I mean, some extended family, teachers, those are all people that are involved in this that have to take a role, an adult role, a parenting role at one point, in all of our kids' lives. So yeah, so if you have the value system already set up and the boundaries, and the consequences already set up, you can parent that according to what the co-parents have decided. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's important to step back to the co-parents first and say, yeah, our agreement is that the 7-year-old goes to bed at 8:30 every night, and then they go to bed at 8:30 in the other home with the bio parent, right? And the bio parent, so yeah, I mean, of course you co-step parent according to those first. So the co-parenting is first.
Okay. And then one more question. do you have recommendations for books on dating after divorce as far as how to talk
Yes,
kids about
it's my favorite subject. So after divorce, okay, my first and foremost, let me get it. It's essential to do lots of work after the divorce, statistically 4 to 6 years after divorce to move through it. We don't move on, we move forward and through it. It takes 4 to 6 years after a divorce. So, how to avoid falling in love with a jerk, number one. For men, you know, Man's Guide to Women, this is essential. This is essential. So this is just good for everybody. I mean, I have my women read this because it's so good. This is a Gottman book. This is, Van Earp, How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. I constantly talk about this. These are my top 5 books of all time. This is how, it's not jerk or jerkette. It doesn't matter. It's not bias. It's just jerk or jerkette. So this talks about how to have boundaries and what boundaries are, what a jerk is. I've got lots.
And then, Carol, what about how do you talk to your kids about it? So you're ready to date.
Yeah, that's in chapter 2, was it, in this one? So that's a big question. So taking a low profile, it's like, go back to this slide. It's taking a low profile, time. Remember, 4 to 6 years for us. How long does it take for a child to adjust to after divorce and heal and move through it? Not on, move through it. It takes a long time, but that doesn't mean you stay single for 4 to 6 years, but it just takes some work. So go to therapy. So it's like, it talks about that in that of how to like talk to your child about a new player, a new key player. Like, when do you introduce them? Everybody's different, but I'm a very low profile. It depends on the age of the kids. Teenagers are very young, of when you introduce that new partner, that new boyfriend, that new dating. You're just exclusive. I'm always, my rule is you have to be exclusive and you have to date for a good amount of time. I'm not going to give you that number, but it's, yeah. So, but this is a guide. This talks about dating at any age or any situation. This talks about how dating works and how you attract each other and how, and it goes through all that. Gottman, great. But there's like post, but staying okay and like, those are my 2 top. Relationship Cure, to go through Gottman stuff of like how to make sure that you're the second time around, because right there you have 75% chance it won't work, and it's really discouraging. Like I said, it's a miracle, but how you do that miracle is essential.
Okay, so that's all of our questions. So
Cool.
Thanks, Carol, this was awesome. And like I said, I'll email all of you guys the video and references and anything, and if you need anything, you can just email me directly. If you do want to schedule with a therapist at Blomquist Hill for this type of issue, you can email me directly and then give me your phone number and I'll call you and get you set up with somebody. I'm happy to do that. That's it. We are going to be doing these parenting workshops once a month. We've been doing it for the past few months. I haven't gotten the 2020 schedule up yet. I have it, just don't have it up on the site yet. So beginning of January or end of this month, go ahead and go on our website under the workshop tab and you can go and register for whichever ones you want.
Yep. Boundaries is next.
Yes. Okay. Thank you guys. See you later.